June 24th is a date of interest for both Oxfordians and Freemasons. It's the day that, according to history, Edward de Vere passed away, and it's the celebration of the nativity of John the Baptist, one of the patron saints of Freemasonry. In previous videos, I've pointed out some things I and other researchers have found that make June 24th, or 624, a curious date for Oxford to have died. His name, Edward de Vere, is comprised of 6, 2, and 4 letters. And reading the numbers right to left like Hebrew, 426 equals the number of letters in Earl of Oxford. Then somebody typeset the sonnet's dedication into 6, 2, and 4 lines. Count the 6th, 2nd, and 4th words and get the phrase, "These sonnets all by Ever the 4th T." Ever is an abbreviation of E. Vere and an anagram of Vere. 6, 2, and 4 add up to 12, and the word ever, or E. Vere, is printed in the sonnet's verse exactly 12 times. And then there's Shakespeare's play entitled A Midsummer Night's Dream. Midsummer is on 6/24, or June 24th. As a coincidence, there are twice 11, or 22 letters in the words A Midsummer Night's Dream. Twice 11 is a concept that I believe refers to Edward de Vere and a Freemasonic organization. In the previous video, I explained that twice 11, or 22, is a crucifix or cross from the 22nd letter of the Hebrew, Greek, and Latin alphabets. Twice 11 brethren, or cross brotherhood, seems to me like a shorthand version of the Brotherhood of the Gold and or Rosy Cross, so they may have been one and the same. Or twice 11 could have been a group headed by Oxford producing the Shakespeare works, the Sonnets, First Folio, and I believe the 1611 King James Bible. I want to add that this fraternity may have had another name, as yet undiscovered, but twice 11 is a reference to Edward de Vere and whoever was part of this brotherhood. A few months ago, Alexander Watt pointed this out to me. It's in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 11. Jesus says, "Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath none risen a greater than John the Baptist." Again, John the Baptist is a patron saint of Freemasonry, and this quote by Jesus, attesting to John's greatness, is in a chapter and verse number equivalent to twice 11, which happens to be this Freemasonic organization I've been talking about. Now, variations of this quote have always appeared in Matthew chapter 11, verse 11, and Bibles prior to the King James, but the lines and words weren't printed using the cipher numbers that keep turning up. I compared all my findings to the 1560 Geneva, the 1568 Bishops, and the so-called Breeches Bible, similar to the one owned by Edward de Vere. Again, none of them had any of the numbers or were typeset in the way that the 1611 King James Bible was. I'm going to start with the verse reference numbers for chapter 11. In other Bibles, they add to 130. Here they total 100. According to Peter Dawkins, for the Rosicrucians, 100 is the cipher number for the light of the universe. Using gematria, the name Francis Bacon and the abbreviated name Edward W. Vere both add up to 100. But as a cipher number, 100 might be referring to something else. In Roman numerals, the number 50 is written like a letter L, 100 is written like a letter C, but as a cipher number, 100 could be understood to be 2 L's, 50 and 50. Then, using Latin gematria like these codes do, L is equal to 11. 2 L's then are twice 11. It's similar to something I pointed out in the previous video about Hamlet. To be or not to be, the most famous quote in all of Shakespeare, is on line 60. In Hebrew and Greek, the letter L is equal to 30. 2 L's, or 30 and 30, equals 60. Again, using Latin gematria, L is equal to 11. 2 L's are twice 11. So 60 is the Greek and Hebrew cipher number for twice 11, or 2 letter L's. This may also explain the number of double tau initials found in the sonnets. There are 2 on the cover, dedication, and in the verse. I've shown in previous videos that the initials indicate Edward de Vere. In total, there are 6 T's. 6T is a homophone of 60. 60 is equivalent to 2 letter L's in Greek and Hebrew, and like 100 can be a cipher number for twice 11, de Vere's Freemasonic Brotherhood. Returning to the Bible, Matthew chapter 11, the verse reference numbers add up to 100. In previous Bibles, they total 130. Was this changed to 100 because it's a cipher number indicating De Vere's Freemasonic twice 11? Let's find out. Immediately following the reference numbers, there are 22 or twice 11 lines of verse to the end of the column. The next column, where Jesus speaks of the greatness of John the Baptist, verse 11 begins on line 17, Edward de Vere's Earl number. Keep counting, and verse 22, twice 11, begins on line 57. 57 is 17 plus 40, De Vere's Earl and code number. Same column, the word were is on line 50 from the top and line 11 from the bottom. Were is sometimes used to indicate De Vere because a W is comprised of two letter V's, V-V-E-R-E. As I explained earlier, in Roman numerals, the number for 50 is written like a letter L. Using Latin gematria, L is the 11th letter. V-V-E-R-E is on line 50 from the top and line 11 from the bottom. Both numbers are equivalent to the letter L. Again, with Latin gematria, L is equal to 11. Two L's are twice 11. As I pointed out before, Matthew chapter 11, verse 11 begins on line 17. Then, after the name John the Baptist, there are 40 lines to the end of the column. The quote has been typeset to 1740, De Vere's Earl and code number. From the beginning of the verse, there are 22 words until the colon, which occurs following the name of John the Baptist. In previous Bibles, the quote is only 20 words, so 2 words were added to make it twice 11, or 22 words. Compare this to a Geneva Bible similar to the one owned by Oxford. The quote about John being the greatest among men appears in the same chapter and verse, but it's printed on different lines and has only 20 words before the colon. In the King James Bible, it's set up so that the quote begins on line 17, has 22 words before the colon, and then 40 lines till the column ends. In every Bible divided into chapter and verse, the quote always appears in Matthew chapter 11, verse 11. But in the King James Bible, words were added and the lines set up so that we get the numbers twice 11 and 1740. There's more on the page. Notice the difference between the way the King James and Oxford's Geneva Bible are printed. Verse 11 begins with verily, spelled V-E-R-E-L-Y. In the book, verily spelled with both an E and an I, as it is in previous Bibles. But here, I think the King James was typeset so that specific words from the preceding verse lines appear above it, namely the words way before thee and for thy. Using gematria, the letter B is equal to 2. In classical Greek, H was used for the long vowel E, so T-H-E-E can be read as T-E-E-E. A homophone of way is W-E-I-G-H, which means to count or consider carefully. If we do that here, before thee can be understood as 2 for T, or 2 and 40. Counting 2 and 40, we get 42. Using the repeated count, 42 is equal to 2 letter T's, the initials found in the sonnets. Also, in the King James Bible, above the word weigh is for thy. If we weigh this or consider it carefully, again H is eta or E, so the words for thy can be read as for T, De Vere's code number. So above line 17, verily or veerly, which begins chapter 11, verse 11, we have the equivalents of 40 and 42. I often refer to a palindrome I found in the book of Job that tells us E Vere is 2T and 4T, or 42 and 40. Another way of looking at chapter 11, verse 11, line 17 is like this. Again, Edward de Vere is both 40 and 42, or 4T and 2T. And then what follows is the quote about the patron saint of Freemasonry, John the Baptist. One of the places where we find these same numbers is in Sonnet 22, which I explained in the 23rd video. Two numbers that are mathematically equivalent to twice 11 are 22, which is 11 plus 11, and 121, which is 11 times 11. When the left side acrostic of Sonnet 22 is deciphered, we get the message, twice 11, who is 40 and 42. 40 is de Vere's code number, and 42 is equal to 2 T's. This is telling us that twice 11 is Edward de Vere. Then after the verse number 17, Oxford's Earl number, there are 23 lines. 17 plus 23 equals 40, his code number. And the last verse of the column is 22, which is twice 11, or 22 words long. In earlier Bibles, it's only 20 words. With everything I've just gone over and comparing it to previous Bibles, it looks to me that Matthew chapter 11 was encoded using the cipher numbers twice 11 and 1740. And it's not the only place where Jesus says that John the Baptist is the greatest among men. He does the same in the Gospel of Luke chapter 7 verse 28. And just like the King James Version of Matthew, it's worded and set up differently than in previous Bibles. Looking at the second column, it begins with the number for verse 17 above the word fourth. In classical Greek, H is eta, used for the long vowel E, so this can be read as 1740. After 1740 are 17 lines in the word were, or double V Vere. Below that is the number for verse 22, or twice 11. Count 40 lines, de Vere's code number, and the column ends with the letter G collation mark. For Freemasons, the letter G stands for God. And counting up from the last line, the 17th begins with for thy. Like I showed earlier, for thy can be read as 4T, 1740. Looking at verse 28, where again Jesus says there are none greater than John the Baptist. Even though it's worded a little differently than Matthew 11:11, it's set up just like it. After the beginning of the verse, there are 22 words until the colon, which occurs following the name of John the Baptist. In earlier Bibles, it's fewer words. So it seems like Luke 7 was also typeset to include the cipher numbers twice 11 and 1740, connecting them to de Vere and Freemasonry. And just like Matthew chapter 11, there's a Vere reference on line 50. In Roman numerals, 50 is written like a letter L. On line 50, next to the symbol for a margin note made of two vertical lines that looks like an 11, is the word beer, B-E-E-R-E, which is a stand for a coffin. In Spanish, B and V are pronounced the same, so B-E-E-R-E has the same pronunciation as V-E-E-R-E, Vere. It's on line 50, or L in Roman numerals. With gematria, L is equal to 11. The margin notes a character that looks similar to an 11. So we have Vere on a line with two references to the letter L. Two L's are the same as twice 11. The two chapters where Jesus says that John the Baptist, the patron saint of Freemasonry, is the greatest among men, both have twice 11 references to Vere on line 50. For me, this is further proof that since 50 is L in Roman numerals, 50 and 50, or 100, can be understood as two L's, which are code letters for twice 11. You know, there are 17 sonnets that begin with the de Vere double V character, and I think the numbers of the sonnets have significance. The reason why sonnet 100 begins with a double V is because it's a cipher number for twice 11. Another icon of the Freemasons is Hiram Abiff, the chief architect of Solomon's Temple, who was killed by 3 ruffians when he refused to give them the secret password of the Master Mason. Hiram Abiff is also known as the widow's son, and Freemasons refer to themselves as the widow's sons. There are two places in the Bible where a widow's son is raised from the dead. One is here, again in Luke chapter 7, but in the first column. 40 lines from the top of the page is verse 12. 12 is the letter M in Latin, and Hebrew M is mem, which is equivalent to 40, Oxford's code number. The verse reads, "Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow." After the word son, there are 17 lines to the end of the column. Looking closer at the verse, the 22nd word is son, referring to the widow's son. Twice 11, widow's son. Similar to the way the reference to John the Baptist was encoded using the cipher numbers 1740 and twice 11, so is the reference to the widow's son. The other place where a widow's son is raised from the dead is in the Old Testament, 1 Kings chapter 17. Verse reference number 17 reads, "He raiseth the widow's son." Looking closer at verse 17, son is the 11th word this time. The widow's son dies, and then 22 lines later, Elijah, through the power of God, raises him from the dead in verse 22. Just like the verses about the widow's son in the Gospel of Luke, the verses of 1 Kings were typeset to coincide with a cipher number. This doesn't occur in the previous Bibles. Also, counting the words in verse 17, the 40th is Elijah, and just below the number for verse 22 are the words of Elijah. Looking back at Matthew 11, as I've explained in other videos, 29 is a number that can indicate 1740. 29 is 17 plus 12. In Latin, the 12th letter is M, and Hebrew M is mem, equal to 40. And it's on line 29, where Jesus says that John is the prophet Elijah returned. Though John denies he's Elijah, it's here where Jesus affirms that he is. So there's a connection between John the Baptist, the patron saint of Freemasonry, and the prophet Elijah, who raised from the dead a widow's son. I believe these may also be examples of the King James Bible being typeset so that certain verses, lines, and words having to do with Freemasonry coincide with the cipher numbers twice 11 and 1740. There's one more thing I want to point out regarding John the Baptist from chapter 11, verse 11 that I think shows design. The New Testament opens with the Gospel of Matthew, beginning with the first page, start turning 1, 2, and so on. When you've turned 6 full pages, Matthew chapter 11 is on the back of the 6th page. Then in the second column, after 4 verses, verse 11 starts with Jesus saying there are none greater than John the Baptist. Whoever produced the Bible set it up so that the quote in Matthew chapter 11, verse 11, is found after you count 6 pages, look in column 2, and count 4 verses. 6, 2, 4. And 6, 2, 4 is the day that the Nativity of John the Baptist is celebrated. And when you add up the values of the 4 verses above verse 11, 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10, they equal 34. As I've shown many times using the repeated count, 34 is equal to LL. With gematria, L is equal to 11. 2 L's or LL is twice 11. And it's the quote about the greatness of John the Baptist in chapter 11, verse 11, that follows this sequence of numbers. Of course, these 4 numbers will always add up to 34, but they were typeset so they appear as the only numbers at the beginning of the second column. Consider everything. 6 pages, second column, 4 verses. 6, 2, 4, the day of St. John the Baptist's Nativity. And the 4 verses are equivalent to twice 11, a Freemasonic organization. That's design. Another couple numbers that add up to 34, 17, and 17. The first Freemasonic Grand Lodge was officially founded on 6/24 St. John the Baptist Day in the year 1717. Is this a hint at Oxford's having been the 17th Earl? Possibly. Something else Alexander Waugh brought to my attention is in his book, How Science Proved Edward de Vere Was William Shakespeare. David Roper argues that 1717 may also represent 1111 on the basis that, in Latin, the number 17, septem decim, is 11 letters. A reason the Freemasons chose the day 6/24 is because it's the nativity of their patron saint. Maybe they chose the year 1717 because it represents 1111, and Twice 11 was a Freemasonic organization, specifically one including Edward de Vere. I hope I've been able to demonstrate how design went into the production of the King James Bible. Compare it to previous Bibles and you'll see how significant words and phrases were typeset to coincide with the cipher numbers Twice 11 and 1740. I want to thank Alexander Waugh for his suggestions and all the work he's done, and to Ron Raffel and Christopher Johnson for their correspondence. Chris is making videos under the name Nobody Oxfordian, and in the description below I'm including a link to one he's made where he goes over de Vere's famous crown signature and offers another possible reason why Oxford's code number may have been 40. I have no idea if de Vere was royalty, but whether you believe he was or not, the video is interesting, so please check it out. Thank you for watching.